I'm Rico Bolvo, and this is Uncut News. The GPSU is telling the government that the honeymoon period is over and it's now time for them to pay up. The union, that represents a large percentage of state employees, say that they have already sent a letter to the government requesting the start of outstanding salary negotiations for 2020 and 2021. According to the GPSU, they originally approached the government last September, but the Minister of Public Service, Miss Sonia Parag, couldn't have cared less. They then said they tried to ask for their proposals to be considered for inclusion in this year's budget, but that request was flatly ignored. Among their requests were proposals to raise the minimum wage and the tax threshold, retaining of staff to operate in a post-pandemic world, personal protective equipment, and an increase in pensions for retired public servants. The last time the GPSU had a pay increase was in January of 2019. The 16-year-old prime suspect in the murder of 10-year-old Anthony Cortez of Sophia, Georgetown is currently in police custody. He made his first appearance today in court to answer to the charge of murder. Anthony Cortez was killed during the execution of a robbery under arms which occurred at Seafield, Sophia on March 11th of this year. At least one other suspect is being sought. And, in case you were wondering, yes, they did interrogate the two other suspects until they confessed. Still in Sophia, 23-year-old Martin Blair is wanted by the police in connection with the stabbing death of Daniel Boatrin during an argument over a bicycle. On March the 15th, police said that Boatrin and Blair had an argument over a bicycle he had borrowed from Blair and subsequently lost. The argument got heated and both armed themselves with knives, and the altercation ended with bloodshed, with Blair stabbing Boatrin to death. Viewers beware, cause Noriko is giving you another scam alert. This time, some scamp is trying to impersonate the president on Facebook. Users have reported that this fake account is pretending to be from the Ministry of the Presidency and is soliciting funds and requesting personal information from unsuspecting victims. So just know that if the president suddenly drops into your DMs, there's a 99.999% chance that it's a fraud. Now it's time to tell you about Best Buy's car of the day. Currently on sale is this 2018 Suzuki Swift RS Sports Edition. It comes with Bluetooth, CD stereo, steering controls, crystal light, mag rims, fog lamps, and much more. Pay cash for $3.6 million, or pay down as low as $720,000 with around $70,000 monthly, and it's yours. Call or WhatsApp 662-0844 for more info, or visit their showrooms at 171 Peter Rose Street, Queenstown, or Lot 2 Lamar Street, and tell them Noriko sent you for this sweet deal. If you woke up this morning thinking, gee, I wonder what Charandas Prasad is doing right now. If you did, then that's a little weird to be honest. But to answer your question, he is starting his first day on the job as the High Commissioner of Guyana to India. He presented his credentials to the President of India, Sri Ramnath Kovind, in a virtual ceremony in New Delhi. Yes, India has a president and a prime minister. Typically, the president is basically a figurehead, while the prime minister holds the real power. You can blame Burnham for switching the roles over here. Here's news I didn't know about from an organization that I didn't even know existed. Yesterday, the Guyana Metal Recyclers Association urged the government to lift the export ban on scrap metal because the 23 exporters that make up the group do not want to wait until the government finally gets around to installing a new container scanner. They said that the Minister of Tourism and Commerce, Onij Waldron, was ready to lift the ban, but Kanu was not. The association officials acknowledged the need for intensive investigations, but urged authorities to, quote, be realistic. Scrap metal trade is not the only trade that has a cocaine bust. This happens to every trade, end quote. They also added that they shouldn't even be punished because Marlon Primo wasn't even a member of their group. International anti-narcotics experts have said that it is actually more difficult to detect cocaine from among huge chunks of containerized scrap metal. As such, the government has halted the export since the 11.5-ton bust in Belgium. At least 150 containers of scrap metal usually leaves the nation monthly when the trade is in full swing, which is a number that is way higher than I even thought it was. I mean, seriously, I didn't know people buy Guyanese scrap metal like that, but hey. If you own one of the best diesel engines in the world, then the name Cummins is very familiar to you. But even the best engines need spare parts, am I right? powered automotive truck spares, and engine parts at 1161 EE Eccles, stocks come in engine parts for 6BT and 6CT engines, and much more. Call or WhatsApp 697-0171 or follow Powered Automotive Truck Spares and Engine Parts on Facebook. After just mere hours on the run, last night the cops recaptured yesterday's escapee. 45-year-old Taji Singh, aka Sati, was presumably recaptured somewhere on the west coast, which means he got further than I really thought he would. Anyway, he told police that it really wasn't a fully thought-out escape plan. He was sent to empty the garbage, and that's when he saw the opportunity to flee. Nevertheless, Sati was escorted back to the Lenore police station and back into custody. It's now time for today's Run Report. Today, the nation recorded 120 new cases. Oh my. There are now 212 persons dead and 7 persons in the ICU. There are now 747 persons in home isolation, and the total number of known cases in the nation now stands at 9,442. So, please people, wash your hands frequently. Avoid touching your nose and mouth and mask up before you leave the house. When you do leave home, try to avoid enclosed spaces and large crowds. And remember to give 6 feet of space between you and others. Now let's take a look at news in the region. The Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Gaston Brown, has threatened to end all support to the struggling airline Liat if pilots and those who represent them continue to push their class action lawsuits against the company. Brown said that he could be forced to hasten the liquidation of the company while distancing his government from any liability arising therefrom. Bayesian lawmakers recently approved an amendment blocking anyone from suing the government over any claims against Liat. As such, Barbadian Captain Neil Cave, along with 9 other current or former Liat pilots, approached the High Court in Antigua and Barbuda to declare that the newly amended act is unconstitutional. Gaston Brown fears that such a lawsuit will effectively kill the crippled, poorly run airline. You can multiply your cash by selling digital top-up. This is a legit way you can earn some extra money at your business or to supplement your existing side hustle. Become a top-up vendor quick and easy through Sailor Plus. Call them now on telephone number 685-3109 for more info. On Wednesday, U.S. federal prosecutors recommended a life sentence against Honduras' ex-lawmaker Juan Tony Hernandez, following the conclusion of an oral trial on drug trafficking crimes, which involves his brother, the current president of Honduras, Juan Orlando Hernandez. Besides the life sentence, the feds are looking to make Tony pay a fine of US $10 million and the seizure of another US $138.5 million. Tony was accused of operating a huge network to transport at least 185,000 kilos of Colombian nose powder into the US. He was also accused of funneling drug money for 15 years into the Honduras National Party. A verdict is expected on March 23rd. And now for our weird news story of the day. The degenerates on Reddit have moved their attention to a good cause. Since last weekend, members of the stock trading Reddit community R Wall Street Bets adopted around 3,500 gorillas by raising over $377,000 for the Diane Fossey Gorilla Fund, an ape conservation protection and scientific research organization. Apparently, the adopting frenzy was started after one user shared that he adopted a gorilla through the fund and named it GameStop. Within hours, the subreddit was full of posts from users adopting the animals and raising money for the charity. One of the group's slogans is Apes Strong Together, so naturally it would only make sense for everyone to help actual apes. Tara Stornsinski, president and CEO of the Gorilla Fund, said that the group had been surprised, thrilled, and appreciative of the donations. Robbery season might be over, but the streets are still mean. If I were you, I would consider getting security for the home of business. I personally recommend Sheriff Security Service. I find that they are the most professional, with well-trained armed or unarmed guards. Get some security, people. Moving on to our Uncut News Views poll question of the day. Every day we pose a question about current events in the nation, the region, the diaspora, and how you feel it relates to us. So you give your responses in the comments, and we'll read the best ones in the following episode. Yesterday's question was, how do you feel about our nation strengthening ties with China? Kenna J said, we got oil. Everybody wants to be friends for their own benefits. Jen Joseph said, any other country except blast to China, okay? Please. And finally, Peril Holloway said, there will always be benefits for smaller countries to have good relations with bigger, more powerful countries like China. The problem is that sometimes those benefits are small compared to what we have to do for them. China has been trying to expand and take control in this region for years. The meeting between China and Guyana was just China letting us know who's the boss. All good points. So for tonight's question, the GPSU says it's time for the government to return to the negotiation table. Do you agree with them, or should they just wait another year? Think about that question and tell us in the comments below. If your response is good enough, we just might feature it in Friday's episode. Anyway, that's all the time we have for tonight. Check us out tomorrow for another. Until then, I'm Rico Boldford saying good night, folks. Hey, Uncut News viewers, thanks for watching. You can subscribe by clicking on this button over here, or click over there for more news. You can also drop a comment to let me know if you've made it to the end of the video. Goodbye for now.